Hi, it's Mitch from Pickdawgz.com here with your free pick in the Michigan versus Washington College Football National Championship game on Monday, January 8th, 2024. Of course, if you like all the free picks we do at Pick Dawgz, you'll love our premium picks. Use our discount code PICK for 15% off. We also have Dime Club and Sharp Trading Plays meant for people who make big bets. If that's you, go ahead and text that number that you see on the screen. They're not available on the website. But let's get to this one. Michigan taking on Washington. And as for all of the fanfare as to who makes it into the playoffs and who doesn't make it into the playoffs, here we are, number one against number two, two undefeated conference champions. Of course, there was another undefeated conference champion that was not invited into the playoffs, and the two teams that they put in ahead of them both lost. So, the committee probably did not get it right once again. But next year, well, when it expands to 12 teams for the playoff, they'll get even more chances to not get it right because there'll be more teams that will be probably at least contending for a spot in the playoffs. So, believe me, we haven't seen the last of teams getting, jobbed when it comes to the playoff. But the thing is that, as we've seen historically, usually when they get into these top 2-3 teams in the playoff, they generally seem to get it right. Most of these playoffs have been number one against number three or number one against number two. That's the way that most of these playoffs have played out. And I think in this case, as much as it might pain me to say it in some respects, I think they at least got two of the top teams in the nation here. Michigan certainly did not play a very good schedule this season, but they took care of business in all those games, and you have to give them credit for that. The Ohio State team that they beat absolutely got rung up in their bowl game. Of course, they're missing their quarterback and a couple other players like Marvin Harrison Jr., who certainly is one of the top players in all of college football. But at the same time, a lot of their starters played in that game, and they were absolutely ineffective. When we saw Michigan last time out, they played extremely well in their playoff game to get here, beating Alabama in overtime. I think when we look at that particular game against Alabama, and most people have heard my criticisms of Michigan over the years, and that's because they get this treatment like they're this world-beating team every single year, but they've won absolutely nothing in my entire lifetime except for one split title that, to be honest with you, if they would have played Nebraska that year, they would have gotten wrung out of the building. That Nebraska team won 3 out of 4 years the national championship. Michigan beat the Oregon Ducks. Congratulations to you, who were terrible that year. Meanwhile, when we look at what Michigan did last week against Alabama, I think when you look at that Alabama team, we say, well, it certainly wasn't the best Alabama team that Saban ever had. They did beat Georgia, though, and they did, have that miracle comeback against an Auburn team that got crushed in their bowl game. Then they also had that game at USF where they were just absolutely dreadful in the home loss to Texas. But, at the same time, it's still a Nick Saban coached Alabama team. And they were up by 7 against Michigan. And when push came to shove, Michigan drove the ball down the field and tied the football game. And I think, even the biggest Michigan haters, you have to give Michigan credit for doing that and for having it and wanting it. And I think at the end of the game, it wasn't a bad play call why Alabama lost that game. They lost because they allowed Michigan to drive down the field and score that other touchdown to tie it up to put them in that position in the first place. And I think, while we could take a lot away from Alabama for the bad snaps and all those other things, I think that we have to give Michigan credit too. On the other side of this one, this Washington team just doesn't get a lot of love. They play out west in the Pac-12. A lot of people don't see a lot of their games. They play in late night spots. They also have that Pac-12 network. Of course, next year we'll see a lot more of Washington, as they move conferences. But this year's Washington team has been stellar, and this is a program that's been very good for a very, very long time. They're not great every single year, but this is their second time in the playoff, so they're certainly not a newcomer to the big stage. But Michael Penix Jr. has been nothing short of sensational this season, and in order for Washington to be competitive in this particular game, he is going to have to play the best game of his college career. This Michigan defense certainly has a pass rush. I don't know if they have the speed on the pass rush to contain Penix, but I do think that they will push him out of the pocket. But the problem is, Penix is at his best when he's out of the pocket. And the thing is that these Washington receivers are like NFL receivers. And I think the Michigan secondary certainly has some guys that can play. This is a really, really good matchup and a close matchup of two good teams. I think that Washington will be able to get to this Michigan defense. We saw Alabama in the second half move the ball on Michigan, but I'll tell you what, Milroe doesn't have nearly the arm or the receivers that Washington does. Washington has a lot of size as well, and while their defense certainly hasn't been, top of the notch, the offense makes up for it. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game than people think, and I think getting these 4.5 points in a game where it could come down to the very last possession, certainly not something I'm willing to pass up. I'm going to take the points with Washington in this one. To be honest, I'm not even sure who wins the game, but I think it's going to be closer than this, and that's going to be my free pick. Of course, while you're doing your picks, putting your bets in, use our free betting tools at sportschatplace.com. They're 100% free, and they'll help put you on the most favorable bets on the board today.